House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has been untouchable for most of her career in spite of the fact that she fails to adequately represent the American people. Now, the reason why I say she's been untouchable is because the Democratic Party loves her. They promoted her multiple times to a leadership position, and this is because she is a fundraising machine. Nobody can deny her that, because she is able to bring in millions of dollars to the Democratic Party, and they love her for it. And you really don't make it far in the party unless you prove yourself as someone who can bring in money to the party. Now, because of all this money, though, she is beholden to all the donors that she's raised money from. So she's been untouchable. The Democratic Party has propped her up, even though she's a failure of a politician. She's done nothing for the American people. And she's never really faced a serious primary challenger until now. And she's not just facing any primary challenger. A Bernie-crat will be challenging Nancy Pelosi. So according to the Los Angeles Times, San Francisco attorney Stephen R. Jaffe is a lifelong Democrat, and he intends to do what no Democrat has been able to do so far: make it a runoff election against House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Jaffe, 71, is an unemployment attorney who became a volunteer for the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign last year. "I was a pretty hardcore Bernie Sanders supporter," said Jaffe, who gave money to the campaign and volunteered during the Nevada caucuses. He was one of two attorneys who filed for an injunction on behalf of Sanders supporters in the California primary, requesting revotes and an extension of the voter registration deadline. The request was ultimately denied. Jaffe said he was devastated by Sanders' loss to Hillary Clinton in the primary season, and that Sanders in part inspired him to run. He says that he supports single-payer healthcare and criticized Pelosi for raising money from corporations and special interests. "I know that Ms. Pelosi's strategy has been to essentially ignore anyone who is challenging her, but I anticipate she'll have a more difficult time doing that with my candidacy," Jaffe said in an interview. He thinks if local progressive activists can propel him to a runoff with Pelosi, he'll have a quite realistic chance of winning. There's a rumbling, a wave of activism here by people who have never really stepped forward before. So this guy's the real deal. He is the real deal, and this is long overdue. It's about time that Nancy Pelosi has a primary challenger that will get her to be accountable to the American people. And, you know, the Democratic Party, the DNC, like I said, they want to do everything they can to protect Nancy Pelosi because she's in bed with large multinational corporations and billionaire donors that fund the Democratic Party's elections. So she's someone who they desperately want to keep in power. But here, you know, Jaffe comes along. He says, you know what? I'm tired of the status quo. I don't like that she's taking money from large corporations and doing their bidding. And I've got an example to prove that. So Nancy Pelosi, she actually came out surprisingly in favor of a single-payer healthcare system. She says that she supports that plan. However, she has yet to co-sponsor HR 676. Now, if you're wondering why someone who supports single-payer won't co-sponsor a bill that would actually bring single-payer to fruition, well, I'll tell you why. Nancy Pelosi's #1 donor is health professionals. She has taken $1.3 million from them over the course of her career. So if you're wondering why she won't support HR 676, you know, that probably has something to do with it. She's also accepted $500,000 from the insurance industry, another $500,000 from lobbyists, and nearly $400,000 from hospitals and nursing homes, as well as $400,000 from the pharmaceutical industry. So make no mistake about it, her donors are paying her to not co-sponsor bills like HR 676. And if that's not the case, Nancy, prove me wrong. Come out and co-sponsor HR 676, and I will gladly give credit where credit is due. But you won't do that, Nancy. You refuse to do anything that would jeopardize your ability to raise money. And if you come out and co-sponsor a bill that existentially threatens the health insurance industry, they're not going to be donating to you in the numbers that they have been throughout the course of your career. And this is something we all need to be really careful about. So lately, there's been Democrats coming out saying, you know what, I think healthcare is all right, like Tom Perez. And there's also been Democrats just flat out saying, you know, I support a Medicare for all system. However, if you ask them whether or not they would co-sponsor a bill like HR 676, they'd say, well, you know what, maybe not. I don't think I'm going to co-sponsor that because, you know, I think my constituents are against it. Now, there's an example of this. I had Alexis Frank on my show. She's running to represent the 5th District of South Carolina. Lovely human being, just such a nice person, overall a well-rounded candidate. But I invited her on the show specifically because I thought she would be an ally to HR 676, because on Twitter she stated that she supports Medicare for all, but unfortunately, when I asked her whether or not she would co-sponsor HR 676, she declined. And obviously you can see the disappointment in my face during that interview. But this isn't just, Alexis Frank, not to harp on her. This is other Democrats who are using the same tactics. So if a Democrat is trying to win you over by saying they support Medicare for all, make them prove it. Make them co-sponsor HR 676, and if they don't, they're not an ally. And again, this is an issue that's non-negotiable. I'm not backing anyone. You don't get a dime from me unless you pledge to support HR 676 and Bernie Sanders' Senate version that he will be introducing soon. So, Nancy Pelosi, she is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She says she supports single payer, but she won't get on board. And this is because, I showed you got to follow the money if you want the answer. And finally, we have a real chance to get a true progressive elected and finally dethrone this fundraising machine. And it's about time. So you can bet that progressives will be behind Jaffe, because 75% of the Democratic Party's voting base, this includes left-leaning independents, support a single-payer Medicare for all healthcare system. And if they're not going to get on board, they've got to get out of office. This segment of the Humanist Report is sponsored by Lunar Data Systems, who launched an Indiegogo campaign to fund production for the Pluto Project, which is a computer monitor designed to ensure the utmost privacy through the use of glasses that allows only you to see what's on your computer monitor. And if you think this looks cool, which it does, they are offering these perks to supporters of the campaign. Support their Indiegogo campaign to fund the Pluto Project by visiting the link down below.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.